So I just apologized for wasting his time, and I left.
Like the women in Levittown, Lucy tried to put the pictures and the police visit to the back of her mind. She moved on with her life, graduated from high school. But the next year, 2016, she started receiving messages.
I'm not quite sure how it began, but it began at some point that year that I started receiving quite a number of message requests from anonymous profiles, either on Facebook Messenger or via Instagram, of some disturbing content.
The messages began as verbal abuse and threats of violence.
And other times there was photos.
And then there was an onslaught of a different abuse.
Somebody holding their penis over printed out photos of me.
One after the other, after the other. So many that at some point Lucy stopped counting.
Many different photos strewn across the carpet or on a bed.
At that point, it wasn't clear to Lucy whether this was illegal. She figured it was something that she just had to deal with.
It sounds crazy, but I have received so many photos of penises over pictures of me over 5 years. I cannot remember how it feels to be shocked by it. I have received more than I care to remember. I have become so accustomed to that image, I cannot even remember being shocked by it. And I'm sorry to say that. It just seems like same shit, different day now.
As soon as she saw the messages, she blocked the sender and deleted the content. Ping, block, delete. Ping, block, delete. Ping, block, delete. It became the constant humming in the background of her life. By this time, she had moved to Europe and had begun studying to become a social scientist. And still, she had to deal with the dread of the cyber abuse.
From 2018, I had been living in Europe for about a year and a half, and some of the harassment had slowed down. Like it was just a sort of small hangover and remnant from high school, but unfortunately my dad got very sick, so I had to return to New Zealand, and almost as soon as I got back, I started receiving these messages again, but now they were more pointed.
This time, someone had threatened to contact her parents and send graphic photos if she didn't respond to them in a certain number of days.
They also had my parents' email addresses already in the email address bar to prove to me that they knew who my parents were and where they worked. The idea that just someone out there was obsessed with hurting me definitely began to take over my life. I remember being really scared to go out at night on my own. I was terrified of ever sleeping somewhere where you could see from the outside in, because I always had this vision that someone was following me at night and would look into my room. It was unbelievable how much the fear consumed me. I felt sometimes overcome with suspicion, and it really undermined a lot of relationships I had with men or people that were in the life of my mom, or men that were in the life of my friends. I just always had in the back of my mind that any of them could be the one.
Lucy decided she would try to go to the police again.
At this point, I felt, now I'm an adult, so like they're definitely gonna take me seriously. I'm not wearing my school uniform this time. I am a very old 20-year-old, and so I walked in. It was winter, I remember, so it was cold and dark already at like 6 p.m. And I said, I would like to speak to someone because I'm being harassed. And the exact same thing happened. Despite my best intentions, they just had no idea what I was talking about. I remember it was a very short interaction, and I left and sat crying in my car. I didn't have the language to express what was illegal about what was going on, and they didn't have the language or the training to understand what was significant or illegal about what was going on. So, you know, I probably said something like, "Oh, I'm being bothered on Instagram," or "I'm receiving some unwanted content," or something along those lines. But we didn't have enough digital literacy or social media literacy from a legal or criminal standpoint at that time to deal with these things. I feel like neither of us could communicate to each other what was important. I felt deeply like at that point the onus was on me to prove to them why they should care, and then because I couldn't do that, I panicked and left.
Later, she got an email.
In 2020, I got a very unexpected email from the New Zealand police asking to have a phone call with me, and I was so suspicious at this point of online harassment and the ability to fake anything online that my initial response was that this was my harasser pretending to be a police officer trying to get in touch with me.
Lucy soon registered that this was real and that she was part of something much bigger.
I realised that there was a wider case going on revolving around another woman who was being harassed in a similar way, where they were basically had reverse engineered some evidence that led them to me.
In addition to Lucy, Doug Nuku and Will Wallace had identified 12 other victims in New Zealand, and they were getting closer to a perpetrator.
At IGA, we've got Easter specials that are special to you. Like Darryl Lee Licorice Share Pack, 200 to 280 gram selected varieties, $2.75 each. Half price. IGA, you can't beat local at Easter. Offer ends Monday, April 21.
Run a business and not thinking about podcasting? Think again. More Americans listen to podcasts than ad-supported streaming music from Spotify and Pandora. And as the #1 podcaster, iHeart's twice as large as the next two combined. So whatever your customers listen to, they'll hear your message. Plus, only iHeart can extend your message to audiences across broadcast radio. Think podcasting can help your business? Think iHeart. Streaming, radio, and podcasting. Let us show you at iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
How could a beautiful young first grade teacher be stabbed 20 times, including in the back, allegedly die of suicide? Yes, that was the medical examiner's official ruling. After a closed-door meeting, he first named it a homicide. Why? What happened to Ellen Greenberg? A huge American miscarriage of justice. For an in-depth look at the facts, see what happened to Ellen on Amazon. All proceeds to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Will had been following a suspect around the internet for months, getting to know his favorite usernames, watching him post the same victims on different pornographic websites, and even watching him buy and sell second-hand goods on Facebook Marketplace and elsewhere. It quickly became clear that the person who was responsible for the harassment was skilled at what he was doing, and he knew how to hide.
They would use encrypted accounts that were from overseas sites, for instance, America, Proton Email, Switzerland, European sites. It was also obvious at the time that our offender used a VPN.
A VPN, or a virtual private network, is like wearing an invisibility cloak while you glide around the internet. No one will know where in the world you actually are. So Will didn't know exactly where this perp lived, but he kept watching him, waiting for a chance to pick up some detail somewhere about where he lived. Will watched as the suspect bought girls' underwear in bulk. Another time, he saw him post an electric guitar for sale. When he looked closely, the guitar had been laid out on a floral comforter, Will realised he'd seen that comforter somewhere before, on a picture posted to a pornographic website called X-Hamster that he'd already linked to the suspect. Doug was able to subpoena that X-Hamster account. It turned out the suspect hadn't always masked his traffic on the site. This one time, he hadn't.
My team found one IP address that hadn't been masked, and that was an IP address that we could attribute to a person.
Once again, like in Levittown, the background of a photo sealed the deal. Will knew the matching bedspread meant they had the right guy. Now, it was up to the police.
When we kicked in the door, I would say personally for myself, that was one of the most satisfying and highlighted days of my career. You can imagine Americans on their helicopters parasailing down and smashing through windows. That's what I wanted. Boss wouldn't give me that, so the next best thing was kicking in this guy's door and exposing him was a highlight. I've not had a better day at the police, honestly.
His name is Finn Cottam. He lived in Nelson, the same town Lucy's from.
I remember the distinct sensation of time slowing down, and then they just said a name, and I don't know what I expected, but they said a name that was very familiar to me. It was the name of a boy that I went to school with when I was 12. And it just suddenly felt all...
She knew Finn when they were kids, but hadn't seen him since she went to high school.
I felt such a wave of relief that it was a person, because I guess when someone lives in anonymity, you think they're a monster, and when you hear a name, they're suddenly just a person.
But she also said it's scary that someone she barely knew could launch such a vicious, years-long campaign against her. In October 2024, Finn pleaded guilty to blackmail, causing harm by posting digital communication, and possession of child sexual abuse materials. His online abuse campaign lasted nearly a decade, and he targeted over a dozen people. What would you do or say to Finn if you saw him again?
What would I say to Finn? Such a good question. It's so bad, but I just want to ask, are you okay? There's just so much anger coming from him. It's just, someone has to be so hurt and so angry to want to hurt other people in this way. Because I guess even though he's